Welcome to our coverage of the protest in front of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. after SCOTUS, in their decision on Dobbs, has overturned Roe v. Wade. There's protests, there's counter protests going on. We wanted to bring you live coverage here at 4 Eastern. We have some commentators for you today. We have a panel of guests waiting in the wings to comment on not just the protest, but also the decision, and then some of the trigger laws that have also taken effect in some red states across the country, and how quickly Republicans jumped on taking away women's rights to their bodily autonomy. The first guest I want to bring in is Dina Dahl. Dina is an attorney and legal analyst. Dina, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually here at Disneyland with my kids, and you know what? The fact that my daughter is going to have less rights than me, I just wanted to come and talk. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, watching in the last few months, because we know we knew this was going to happen from the leak coming from the Supreme Court. But what was your feeling like the other day when this decision finally came down?
You know, as it's actually shocking, both as a lawyer and as a woman. One, for going back 50 years, it's hard to imagine, even though we knew it was coming. But from a legal point of view, reading the decision and really the twisted knots they went through in order to do this, basically saying we do not have bodily autonomy because potential life is involved. Not life, but potential life. And that should really scare every man and woman in this country who does not want government interference with their body.
You know, I think that when we talk about some of these trigger laws, because I know in my state, Missouri was first up to bat, and I know you look at this from a legal periscope. So tell us a little bit about that trigger law and what you thought about some of these states jumping on it within 6 to 10 minutes. They were already enacting these trigger laws. I know our governor and AG were the reports where they were in rooms all day, not just to enact those trigger laws, but to see how far they can push this decision and how far they can actually take this, because we've seen the president even say, look, you have to make sure that women have the right to travel, even, which is kind of worrisome. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. States are, Oklahoma is already having it at basically fertilization. You are not allowed to have an abortion, which, we know the next step is going to restrict a woman's right and maybe a men's right to use contraceptive. I think Oklahoma's trigger law already probably goes there. And then we do see Democratic states trying to pass laws that would limit any liability for a woman to travel to those states. So all the states here are scrambling. In the midst of all the bad news, there's actually one that I really liked reading about, which was the Biden administration with the FDA is trying to put in their regulations that the ingredient used in the the abortion pill that women can receive by mail, making that legal and having that federal law supersede state laws. That's going to be really interesting to see how that ends up playing out.
Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points there, because when this decision came down, I was talking to my mother, and of course she's very disappointed because her granddaughter doesn't get to receive the rights that she's been able to have, and my wife has been able to have. And she said, "What do you think happens?" And I said, "Well, I think we just don't know. We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know how far they're going to push it. And some states are going to be different than others." So it's very up in the air. I want to bring in some political commentator. Why we have them on hand here, Dina, with you. Emma Silverman is in Texas. Emma, how are you?
I could be better, but
yes.
definitely.
So tell us about some of those from a political standpoint, because I know you talk about the politics on TikTok. Emma is a very big TikTok. So is Dina. So we have two big TikTokers here. So tell us about what your political, what do you think about the political ramifications? Because you speak to the politics a lot on this.
Yeah, so I think that this has been something that's been in the works for a while, been on the GOP agenda for a long time. And even though it was released as a leak a few months ago, it was still just so shocking to see, because as radical as that agenda gets, sometimes you almost don't think it's possible that they could get away with something like that, considering the justices lied under oath at the time. Obviously, I guess people didn't think they were lying, but I think that this just shows it's to them, it's more of a game of what can I lie about and what can I get away with. And it's been that way for a long time. I think it's just, this is the peak, and it's not a peak. It's not the peak. It's a peak. And it's from here, it terrifies me because their agenda gets scarier and scarier, especially in Texas and these other states every day.
Dina, can you speak on women being terrified? Because I know the legal ramifications in some of these states. I mean, states like Missouri are saying, "Hey, it's going to be a felony if you go to another." They're trying to pass laws where they're saying, "Hey, it's going to be a felony if you travel to another state." And Meidas Touch, we're airing from the Meidas Touch network here, the Meidas Media Network, and they even put out a video that shows that women would be given pregnancy tests crossing a state line. And at first, people are like, "Oh, that is outrageous. How would you even dream?" But here we are, a day after this has happened, and they're probably considering this in rooms full of men, Republican men, right now. Can you tell us about some of those? What does it mean for women if you're going to be a felon if you cross a line to have a medical procedure? This sounds ridiculous, but is this really our reality?
I would say yes, only because of the Supreme Court we have. I mean, obviously, there's some legal issues about whether or not you're going to cross state lines. There's interstate commerce involved. But let's say it goes up to the Supreme Court. Is that Supreme Court going to, rule in favor of the state who wants to demand no abortion? Probably. So I think we are entering kind of this new frontier where we think the Supreme Court may be more logical. They really aren't. And I would really emphasize, I mean, obviously as a woman, 100% makes me feel like a second-class citizen. But this, men should be scared about this too, because they're not just preventing an operation. They are making a woman have something done to their bodies, being pregnant for 9 months. I don't see what the difference is. Conservatives were really upset about vaccines, right? Like if you go into a restaurant, you have to vaccine, which they can do because there's no constitutional right to go into a restaurant. I don't see why now states couldn't mandate vaccines, just like force you to do it regardless, because you're protecting potential life. The Supreme Court just said bodily autonomy does not exist with potential life. We are in a new stage where government interference over our bodies should scare every man and woman in this country.
I think you're right, because I've said on my show, we air live every Monday through Friday, and I've been saying it and pounding that eventually some of these trumped up white guys that are cheering this and saying really vile stuff on the internet are going to walk into a gas station and ask the clerk, "Where are the condoms?" And they're going to say, "But there are no condoms. We banned those condoms." And so I think we're going to get to positions there where a lot of people who are cheering this don't even understand how this will affect them personally, them or their families or their friends. They're not really thinking of this in a way of policy. They're thinking of in a way of a political win. And this really comes to the heart of a policy and how women can receive safe health care. I mean, that's really, trying to get at the heart of it. Dina, I know you have to go, but tell us your handles there, your social handles, so everyone can find you.
Yes, thank you so much for letting me just speak about this, because this is an all hands on deck situation. They can find me on Ask Dina Doll on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Dina Doll on YouTube. Thanks so much for letting us, get the word out.
Well, thank you, Dina, for joining us. I want to bring in another attorney, Kimberly Casper. Thank you, Dina, for joining us. Have a great day and have fun there at Disneyland. I want to bring in Kimberly Casper, and I also want to bring in another political commentator, Lee McGowan, Politics Girl. Lee, how are you? Yeah, your mic there. Kimberly, how are you? Check, 1, 2. Are we all there?
Check, 1, 2.
Yes,
can you
Kimberly.
Hear me?
Yes, Kimberly.
Okay.
I can hear you. Lee, are you there? You are here. We just can't hear you. I'm going to go to Kimberly first. Lee, give me a thumbs up when you think you have your mic set there. Just go to the settings, the little gear down there. Kimberly, What do you think is the legal standpoint when you have this situation of the trigger laws, and then this question of contraception? And I mean, are we going to get to a point to where we can expect the government be forcing to give women pregnancy tests for travel, or if they come into a state or from a state, or, what can we expect from this, do you think?
I am just so upset with the current state. I feel like we're living in a twilight zone, and there's so much distrust. I think that started with George Floyd, COVID. Now it's coming into abortion and gun rights just this past week. And I think everybody has seen those popular memes and photos of all the justices who just came in, like Amy and Kavanaugh, and everyone who said that they had no intention of overturning Roe v. Wade, and here we are. So with Roe v. Wade now overturned, them saying that, oh, our right to travel is protected, I very much distrust that, and thinking that they would have pregnancy tests at a border, I put nothing past anyone at this point. It's upsetting, and I think what Dina was saying before, there's going to be a lot of preemption issues about the federal government passing laws so states can't. And with the Supreme Court making this move, it's like, what are we actually doing here? We're not unifying anybody by this decision. We're separating essentially all these states into different countries, basically, with their own laws and rules.
Right.
And decisions with the Supreme Court is supposed to unify everybody. And it's common sense now that abortions are still going to happen. They're going to happen. It's just making them not safe, and bringing people into different states. Are we going to have to go and pay for fake pregnancy tests, like fake COVID tests, when people want to go and travel to Greece and for their vacations? It's just making that bigger gap between who has privilege and who doesn't.
Yep. I think you're right. Lee, I think you got your microphone there. Good afternoon, Lee. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay.
We can. Welcome. So
Thank
I
you.
actually I want to ask you a question, because Kimberly was kind of touching on the legal part of it, and Kimberly, I want to ask you about the litigation here in a second. But Lee, on the politics of it, because we watched the Supreme Court give a decision on handguns in the state of New York, where they said the state doesn't have the right to regulate a gun, and then the very next day, this court, in a total flip-flop, says the state has the absolute right to tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her body. What do you make of that? I mean, this does not seem like good politics, but I know you dive deep into the politics on your show. So tell us what you think of those politics, of those two decisions back to back. What do you make of this?
Well, those two decisions back to back, the argument would be guns are in the Constitution and abortion is not, right? That's what they're going to say. But the concept of the Supreme Court in general, the concept is that the power of the court comes from the idea that they're above politics. We're supposed to believe that if you are a justice or a judge, you're following an established set of rules, that the law itself is its own thing, and the justices are simply there to interpret it. They're not supposed to be political. Our entire legal system is based on something that is way bigger than a justice's personal preference. And that's why they have to be vetted so sincerely when they're going into these jobs. And they have to be confirmed by the Senate, and they have to have all these things because it's such an insanely consequential job that affects the entire country. So this implication that you can have settled law for 5 decades where the facts remain entirely the same, right? We haven't, Roe and Casey relitigated this. We've relitigated Roe multiple times over the past almost 50 years. And the courts have always come to the same conclusion, that the women of America have this constitutional right to make a private decision or whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. Now, the science hasn't changed. Pregnancy hasn't changed. The burden on the potential mother hasn't changed. Women's rights remain theoretically equal to men's rights. So the only thing that has changed since this was originally decided in 1973, and then all the subsequent attacks on it since then, is the makeup of the court itself, the actual justices, right? That's the only difference. And the fact is that the sponsors of the bill in Mississippi that brought this case, Dobbs, has said that they only brought it because there were new justices. So they weren't there to argue a new case. They were there to get a new result. And I think that is the problem, because that calls into legitimacy. It's a legitimacy problem for the court itself. If you can get a different result just with different justices, then we're not really dealing with the law. We're dealing with the personal preference of individual people.
Yeah, I think, this makeup of this Supreme Court, and that's one of the issues that people are bringing up. Because, Emma, what do you make of this? The majority of these justices who made this decision were not appointed by presidents who got the popular vote. That's another case that people are trying to make today at these protests as they stand to defend women's rights. And there are counter protests as well. But what do you make of, like Lee's saying, the makeup and how the minority rule type thing is happening? And then I want to go to Kimberly back for the litigation. What do you make of that, Emma?
I think that it's clear that there was motive to put these specific justices in. They were carefully chosen. They had their opinions far ahead of time. It was not news that they were going to make some of these decisions. I think that seeing the Roe decision was just the first of many surreal decisions to come from them. I'm absolutely 100% for term limits. And I think that, I forget which senator, I think, or House member, which representative is introducing a bill to call for term limits on Supreme Court justices, because it's alarming that there are 9 people that nobody voted for. And a lot of the presidents who appointed them lost the popular vote, like you said. It's just so alarming to learn. And I think it's a big reason why a bunch of the youth doesn't learn about government very much, because it's a very condescending topic. It's very complicated, because you're learning about the Supreme Court. You're learning that 9 people that nobody voted for are making these insanely detrimental decisions that affect millions and millions of people. And it's just, there's a lot that can be done, and no one's doing enough about it.
I agree. We're getting our feedback here. Kimberly, tell me about because you're a litigator, so tell me about the litigation that we're possibly going to see when women actually get the chance to challenge this, because I know they will in these states where they're really pushing on these trigger laws. So what do you think? What do you see from that litigation standpoint of if women are going to have the chance to have their day in court, as it were? Obviously, working up the Supreme Court is not always fanciful in this situation, because of what Lee and Emma have pointed out, that this Supreme Court is the makeup of this Supreme Court at this point. What do you make of some of this litigation? Do you think this will stop some of these trigger laws, or do you think that's just pure fantasy?
Well, I think the problem with this ban on abortion now and these trigger laws starting, it sets us back to the 50 years before Roe v. Wade was put in place. Women are going to be scared. They're not going to want to come forward. The criminal implications that are going to come from it, it's going to shrink women back. Who's going to want to stand up after this decision at the Supreme Court has been made to say that they were wrong? I know, especially during COVID, and with people trying to, say that the mask mandates and everything were wrong and shouldn't be happening. It's just very hard. It's a David versus Goliath sort of situation. And I also think what would be interesting to see with the criminalization of it is what implication does that have on First Amendment rights, to our freedom of speech. Now, with, I think, especially the younger generation who still, the decision to have kids is still there. I believe we're going to be posting videos of, do we have to go to posting videos of how to have safe abortions now? Or are we going to protect people and get them to travel safely to other states, to those safe haven states? What's the criminalization going to be like now? Is our states that that are criminalizing it and criminalizing aiding and abetting, are they going to block videos, block podcasts and social media talking about safe abortions and talking about these safe haven states? I just think it just opens up a lot more that we have yet to see.
I think you're right, because Joe Biden's speech the other day, when he gave his statement, which was it's about 20 minutes, he kind of went to this. He was like, look, you cannot stop the mail, you cannot stop travel, and we, the Department of Justice, will fight as long as he's the president, as long as he's in the executive branch. He will fight for those rights that he can fight for at this point. I mean, there's not a lot that the President of the United States can say about this decision that the Supreme Court has made just because of our three branches of government here, but he definitely can defend the rights that are still on the books, as long as they are still on the books. But I think that's why it's so important that we pay attention here. And I want to go back to the feed here. You see everyone gathering here in front of the Supreme Court. It's been a show throughout the country. I want to bring in another lawyer and another political commentator. She's coming in of her own here on the broadcast at Meidas Media Network, Jessica Denson and Karen Agnivolo of Legal AF. Karen and Jessica, how are you?
Hi, good to see you.
Okay.
Good to see you. So, Karen, can you speak to the legal part of this thing? I see your cat there wants to get in on the action.
I know. I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay. It's
okay.
Well, see, Jessica and Karen brought their cats today. That's perfect. So tell us what you think about some of this legal talk around the litigation and what's going to happen and what it means for women, because it's really kind of a weird thought process that if you cross an imaginary line, you're no longer a second-class citizen. And you go back over that imaginary line, now you're a second-class citizen again. I mean, really, in this country, it's going to be a weird situation that we have. I believe that's why they're not going to stop at Roe v. Wade. They're going to try to go at women's bodily autonomy, even in these quote-unquote blue states where there is the protected right of abortion and bodily autonomy. What do you make of it? Karen, I go to you. Maybe her cat locked up her screen there. Jessica, I'll go to you.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I've heard this mentioned in the discussion already. Obviously, this is just such sheer hypocrisy on these purists, these fundamentalists, these forced birth anti-abortion movement individuals, because as we all know, abortions are not going to stop. This is just going to make them more dangerous and more deadly. Rich Republican men and their wives and their mistresses are always going to have access to abortion if and when they want it. And believe me, they want it. They will be continuing to have access as they need to abortions. And it's just the people that need it most who are not going to have that access. And as we're talking about this, we're talking about the possible infringement of other very fundamental rights that are very likely coming from this extremist, illegitimate Supreme Court. And as we're thinking about this, can we resolve to not anymore continue to let these Republicans, these fascists, hijack the freedom platform? These people are the most anti-freedom, anti-human rights individuals. I have this book here that there's this article that I love to read. It's kind of a very inspirational article for me. It happens to be from 1895. It's called The New Woman. And I'm going to read you a little excerpt from it. It's talking about when in olden times to 1895, okay, women were treated as chattel, right, as property, which is essentially what the Supreme Court has done in this decision. And it says, this is 1895. The date is no longer BC. Might no longer makes right, and in this fair land, at least fear has ceased to kiss the iron heel of wrong. Why then should we continue to demand woman's love and woman's help while we recklessly promise as lover and candidate what we never fulfill as husband and office holder? 1895, 25 years before women's suffrage. And here we are in 2020 with these extremist, right-wing, illegitimate Supreme Court justices setting women back to this time. I mean, please let us keep this outrage. Let us not let the media, put us onto some other track where we're worried about temporary inflation and we let that drive the narrative in November. This could not be more serious. We have to be energized. We have to be mobilized. And my God, make sure that these people do not remain in power, and we have the tools that we need, which is going to take us voting like hell to make sure these people are not in powers in legislatures and not in power in our Congress, so we can codify Roe. And if we get the appropriate energy in this direction, expand this court so it is no longer packed by these right-wing extremists.
Well, I appreciate the fire there. You know that I always like the heat, because I think you have to come. I think you have to come at these people with that same energy that they try to come at this, because they're not going to stop. I mean, this isn't like they're like, oh, we overturned Roe v. Wade, so now we're good. We're good. We're just going to lay down our arms and walk away. Karen, I see your cat got your mic working back there. So tell us what you make of all of the news over the week. But also seeing these protests today, what hope does that give you? I know Jessica is saying we need to get in the streets. So, and Emma and Lee as well. So, what do you think?
I mean, to me, this is one of the darkest weeks in our nation's history. And the fact that we've had several decisions by the Supreme Court, but then culminating in this Dobbs versus Jackson Women Health, overturning Roe versus Wade, it's just staggering and shocking. And yes, it was not. We did know it was coming, but just the scope and breadth of this decision. Most Supreme Court decisions really just decide the issue at hand. And had they done that here, they would have just decided whether or not the law in Mississippi that banned abortion after 15 weeks was constitutional. And that's really what normally, if they had done things normally, what a Supreme Court justice would do. They would just rule on that one law. But they took it further and overturned Roe and Casey and all of the cases that have established a woman's right to bodily autonomy and abortion for the last 50 years, and did a sweeping decision. For the first time in our nation's history, the Supreme Court took away a right that was firmly established. And, I used to be one of those people who thought that a lot of the, people on the left were kind of alarmists and hysterical. And now I've come to believe that they were not at all. They were just prescient, and we should be very, very afraid. And the majority of the opinion said this only applies to abortion. By the way, it doesn't apply to anything else. However, Justice Thomas, who I think is probably one of the most dangerous people in this country right now, he wrote a concurring opinion where he invited, not like a dog whistle sort of quiet kind of hinting. He actually called out and invited lawyers on the right to bring challenges to the right to the cases that establish a right to contraception, a right to gay marriage, a right to consensual sexual relations. I mean, it's unbelievable to me that these are the rights that the Supreme Court is going to rule on next, and that we are going to start losing one by one by one. It is outrageous what's happening. And the other thing I want to say is there's a majority opinion, there was two or three concurring opinions, and a dissenting opinion. Every one of them was written by a man, including the dissent, which actually kind of pissed me off, that they had Breyer and, Sotomayor and Kagan. I'm so sick of these men legislating and opining on women's rights and women's bodies. And every single one of those decisions was written by a man. And I just want to end with one other thought, which is, the decision very much talked about how, the word abortion, and frankly, the word woman isn't in there either. And that's because at the time the Constitution was written in the 1700s, and when the amendments were ratified in the 1800s, guess who did it? It was all men. Women were second-class citizens, didn't have the right to vote, didn't have any rights, weren't actual citizens. And so they went back down, the majority opinion said there's nothing in this nation's history that establishes a right to abortion. Nothing in the Constitution that talks about it. There's nothing in the history that establishes it. So, therefore it doesn't apply. Well, guess why? It's because that's the history that was when men were the only sort of white men actually were the only people who were considered humans and considered to have rights. And that's why it wasn't talked about and why it wasn't there. And they just totally threw out the window the last 50 years of history that every single woman who would have an abortion or get pregnant today has had a right to since the day they were born. I mean, this doesn't apply to me. I'm no longer of age. This applies to every single woman who this is going to apply to every day of their life. They had a right to bodily autonomy until Friday. And so it's just outrageous what's happening. And women have to take to the streets. Everybody has to take to the streets. They have to end the filibuster. I was against ending the filibuster. I was against expanding the Supreme Court. Forget about it. It's now a matter of life or death. And it's not being alarmist. They have to do that. And they have to fix this because we are headed down a scary, scary path.
Yeah.
– Sorry about that, Lee. I see you shaking your head, and I can tell that you had a lot of commentary. So what are some of your thoughts there on some of the things that Karen was bringing up?
Well, I mean, Karen's exactly right. So is Jessica. So are all the women on this. I mean, this is not going to stop. I mean, I think you've heard a lot of women say that this is terrifying because it is terrifying. It's quite clear that one party has spent 40 years planning this. They have been unhappy basically for 100 years, but particularly since civil rights and women's rights really took off. And they're not going to stop here at taking rights away from women. They don't like this multicultural, pluralistic democracy, right? It's just not working for them. They know they can't win honestly in this world because they can't get enough votes because they don't have enough good ideas that people like. So they withhold our votes, they suppress our votes, they gerrymander our votes because they're trying to take us back to a time where it was more hegemonic, where it was white, straight Christian men and the patriarchy was in charge and all the rest of us kind of took the scraps we were given. And we've got ourselves to a position now where women have a voice, people of color have a voice, Indigenous people have a voice. We're all speaking up and that doesn't serve them. And I think the word terrifying is very useful because this is like, it's a snowball effect. And when you're talking about what we can do about it, you feel a little bit helpless because there really only is a couple things we can do about it, and it's voting. And I know that Emma was talking about term limits and how someone was coming up with a bill for term limits. And unfortunately, I don't think that's ever going to work because a lifetime appointment is in the Constitution. It's written there. So that's going to be a really hard thing to overturn, not to mention that law would get kicked to the Supreme Court. And I don't think the Supreme Court is going to limit their own power. What isn't in the Constitution is the amount of justices that can be on the court. We've had a fluctuating amount of justices for years. People think it has to be 9, but it doesn't have to be 9. We've just had it be 9 for a long time. When it was made 9, it was because we had 9 federal court districts in the country. Now we have 13 federal court districts. So it makes sense that we would expand the court at least from 9 to 13. Personally, I would love to see it that we expand the court. There's nothing against that in the Constitution, but that has to be a law. It has to be a law that Congress writes and the Senate passes and the president signs. It has to go through Congress. Congress is the check on the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court, it's been set up that they check themselves. They have to decide if they step down from a case. They have to decide, and they're not going to. Clarence Thomas isn't taking himself off 1-6 cases because he just wants to. He won't. And there's nothing to check him. So the only thing that will check him is Congress. And Congress could expand the court. We can't do anything about the lifetime appointment. It's written in the Constitution. Unless we have a constitutional amendment, that's not happening. But what we can do is expand it. Personally, I would love to see 12 justices, 13 justices, let's say 13 justices, but we have 9 on the court at a time. So the Supreme Court justices rotate in. So you don't know which justice you're going to get. You can't say, oh, I've got 6 votes in the bag for this case I'm bringing. I don't know which 9 justices I'm going to get. There's a whole idea that we have 27 justices, and they wrote in two straight courts of 9 justices at a time. And our Supreme Court sits there, and you don't know which justices you're going to get. You don't know which justices you're going to work with. You have a certain amount of justices, and they rotate in. We'd hear more cases. It would be faster. And you wouldn't be able to guarantee yourself an outcome, which is where we get the legitimacy problem of the court itself. If I can guarantee myself an outcome, the Mississippi Dobbs people were like, I can guarantee myself an outcome. As soon as Amy Coney Barrett was put on that court, I know exactly what they're going to say. That's not justice. That's politics. And if it's politics and I know the way you're going to vote, then why are you sitting there in a lifetime appointment, right? Why do you have a lifetime appointment and I can't do anything about you sitting there? That makes no sense. So I would like to see an expansion of the courts. It's not packing the court. It's expanding the court to make justice actually blind again, to make it fair.
Well, and to take politics out of it, I think is
Shouldn't
what you're
be there.
saying.
There should be no politics
Right.
there.
Well, and even if there is politics there, what you're saying is when you draw those straws, you don't know what politics you're actually going to get. Emma, I want to go to you because I know you have to go here soon in just a few minutes. So tell us what you think of this expanding the court. And I really tell us about your video, because I noticed a video that Meidas Touch posted that you were talking about this decision the other day. So talk about expanding in your video that you had.
Yeah. So I completely agree with expanding. I think that I completely agree about the constitutionality of it all. I think that it's hard because everyone talks about it all the time. Everyone talks about ending the filibuster and expanding the court. It's been a topic of conversation. It's been mentioned by many politicians in both the House and Senate, but no one's doing it. And like the most frustrating part of it, it's my future. It's my generation of women's future. It's the generation above me, a new generation below me. It's our future. And watching power hungry people in that court playing the game of politics that affects my future, our future, everyone I know's future, is just, it makes you feel so powerless. And there's no real answer besides expanding the court at this point, because I don't know how we can let those justices, those illegitimate, power hungry justices, sit on that court and make decisions about our future when none of us elected them, none of us voted for them. And I completely agree with expanding the court. And to touch on my video a little bit, I was just talking to Ben that morning. I just read the decision, instantly shut my laptop and everything. And Ben asked me to make a video, about a 5 to 7 minute video, just speaking my mind. And that's what I did. I set up my phone and I spoke, and it felt really good to speak. And the video is just everything that I could have wanted from what I sent to them in my voice. And I'm so thankful that I'm able to have my voice heard. But just to touch on, I think one of the most important parts of that video is that it used to be hard to argue that overturning Roe v. Wade and being anti-choice was about controlling women. It used to be it was clear, but it was hard to argue. But now it's easy. It's very clear that it is entirely about controlling women. It's not about states' rights. It's because it's not about small government. It's just not. It's a branch of government telling other governments that they can tell women what to do with their bodies. And it's not about children. As we've seen from recent mass shootings and lack of gun control and horrible rulings on gun control and concealed carry and open carry. It's not about children at all. And it's not about life.
Well,
at all.
Emma, give us where people can find you on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. I believe you're on all the social media. Tell us where they can find you and your great videos. I've been following you for quite some time, so tell us where we can find all those videos about the opinions that you have.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yes, I'm on TikTok. It is Emma_Silverman1, and I'm on Twitter, Emma Silverman1.
Well, great, Emma. Thank you for joining the panel here. We really appreciate having you here. I know everyone loves your videos here. There's no doubt that they love your videos. So thank you very much, Emma. We'll talk to you very soon. I want to bring in another political commentator. She's on Twitter. She's joining us by phone. JoJo from Jers. JoJo, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. I want to go to you and then back to the panel here. I know you only have a few minutes because you're on the phone, but everyone leans on you a little bit on Twitter about your opinions because of your writing and you're a reply guy, as you say. So tell us what your reply is to this decision, but also, does it give you confidence to see these people marching in the streets? I felt a lot of confidence this morning when I started to watch these protests happen and see these videos posted on social media. And it gave me confidence. And that's why I wanted to use, because I usually do a best of the week where it's pre-recorded here on this hour every Saturday. But I wanted to use this to highlight the protest, but to highlight women's voices was important. So tell us what you find about some of these things on social media about the protests and stuff. Give us your opinion.
Well, after the election in 2016, a lot of us took to the streets and protested peacefully. I myself went to New York City, and then I went to Morristown, New Jersey the following year. And it was incredibly inspiring to see how many men and women and children understood the power of our voice, because things felt pretty hopeless for a lot of us after that election. I think I can probably safely speak for a lot of people. And being able to put action out there to say my voice is actually much more powerful than, the people in charge right now. That kind of activism, that kind of energy, that kind of groundswell, that actually can make change. I believe that. I truly do. And I believe what we're seeing right now is the same kind of energy. I think that the Republicans made a huge fucking mistake with this, because I think if there's anything that is going to energize men and women in the Democratic Party and independents too, this is one of those issues that is going to do that. And I mean, we need to stay angry. I really believe we need to stay fired up. We cannot let this momentum lapse. We can't let it be another school shooting that it's not being talked about 2 weeks later. This has to fuel our fire, because to Lee's point, which I think is magnificent, about rotating 27 justices, that would be fantastic so that you don't get this locked and loaded decision. In order for us to be able to achieve that, we need to see change in Congress, right? And in order for that to happen, we need to fucking vote. I hope I can say fucking, Tony, on here, because I
absolutely you can. Okay. You're here on the Meidas Media Network, and you're with the Tony Michaels, so you can say almost any word that you'd like. So go ahead.
Good. Guys, I do tend to swear a lot, but that's what we need to do. We need to vote like we have never fucking voted in our lives. Not even in 2020. We need to get to the polls. We need to vote blue. We need to vote in our state legislatures. We need to make change so that we can expand the court and so that we can codify Roe. It's not impossible. There are ways to do it. We just have to be fired up like I think we are right now. And to Emma's point about this not being about children, I mean, the hypocrisy of this is utterly astounding. I mean, that's what Republicans do best, is hypocrisy. But I mean, this is a party that is against universal health care and universal child care. They're against paid family and medical leave. We have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality among all the rich nations in the world. This isn't at all about children. It's not about life. It's about power that they're trying to harness right now because it is slipping through their fingers because the electorate is not in their favor. And so they're going to do whatever they can to seize as much power as possible right now. And it's not going to stop. So I just wanted to speak to those 2 points, but we need to be fired up like we've never been fired up before.
Well, thank you, Joe, for joining us. I know you had to join us by phone today because you were having some pool fun with the children.
Yes.
So I appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time. Everyone appreciate your commentary. Don't give up there on Twitter, and get out there and protest, and vote, and use your voice. I know you will, Joe. So thanks for joining us. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Okay, talk soon.
Bye-bye. So I want to go back to Kimberly for a second. Kimberly, she was talking about mortality rates and children, and we've been mentioning children, and we've kind of forgotten that, right? That they always say, save the children, save the children, save the children. But there's situations where you would expect a woman to have a legal right where she may have a type of pregnancy that terminates on its own. And for her to have another child, she may have to have a medical procedure, not only just to save her life, but to save her ability to have another child. So sometimes these quote unquote abortion services aren't just to terminate a pregnancy, but it's to extend life beyond that terminated pregnancy for whatever reason it may be. I mean, I know women personally who have had procedures who, if not for that procedure, they would have not had a child or more children. So where do you think some of that, being a litigator, where do you think some of that comes in? Karen's dog's got an opinion here, apparently, but let's go to Kimberly first.
When this decision came out, I have never felt more physically violated by people who I have never met and don't know. And I think for somebody to say what I can and can't do for my own health, it isn't a celebration. It isn't life winning. I think it goes back to people pushing their own. It goes back to the Supreme Court justices pushing their own beliefs on us. And I was raised Catholic. My dad is one of 8, and my mom is one of 7 children. They raised me not that I can do whatever I want with my body. They're to push your own beliefs on other people. That shouldn't be law, and that shouldn't be the Supreme Court's opinion on that. And there's going to be different decisions that come down, like what actually is abortion. With contraception, there are different opinions about IUDs being a type of abortion, different types of hormones in contraceptives being abortion. So there's going to be a lot of trouble with that. There's egg fertilizations. What is that going to be a fetus when it's fertilized? There's going to be a lot of developing law on that. But I think when the Constitution was written back then, it was a lot of religion based, and women didn't talk about their bodies back then. Men didn't know anything about women's bodies. And the fact that we can talk about it now, and how the mortality rates and just physically how it affects our bodies, now to be silenced on it, now to have it be criminalized, it's just setting us back. And it's not even 50 years. I understand that this sets us back 50 years. It's more than that. It's right. Not just a one day Roe v. Wade came up and that's when women's rights started. It was a lot. It was many, many, many years before that. And so it's just very upsetting here.
Jessica, I want to go to you on that point because you were shaking your head that it's setting back more than 50 years. So what's your thoughts on that and some of the commentary that we've had here?
Yeah, well, along those same lines, I've always been a Christian and I've always been pro-choice. I mean, there is nothing in my faith that says that that the government should have the right to take a woman's God-given right to determine her own salvation away from her. And I think that just goes back to the hypocrisy of this decision. And like Emma was saying, the power that these people want to exert. This isn't about, it's not about children. It's not about, stopping abortion. It is about power. And if you don't already follow Senator Sheldon Whitehouse or listen to his speeches, I highly suggest that he talks so much and with so much detail about the influence and dark money that has gone into putting these justices on the Supreme Court for a determined outcome. This is a power initiative, okay? And this goes to the larger picture that we are dealing with, where these rulings that are being forced upon the American people are so undemocratic. They so go against the grain of we the people, against what most Americans want for as far as abortion rights, as far as gun safety. And the Supreme Court is one extreme example. Another extreme example is our Senate. We right now have a 50-50 Senate, but I remind people of this as much as I possibly can. The Democrats in the Senate represent 40 million more Americans than their Republican counterparts, 40 million more, and yet they only have half the seats. So this highlights this undemocratic, these undemocratic forces that we have going on right now highlight the urgency of putting more Democrats into power, because the simple fact of the matter is that Democrats represent many more Americans. They are much more representative of the actual desires of women and the majority of Americans on so many issues. So we have to just, like everybody is saying, keep this energy, keep it till November, and make sure that we churn out votes like we have never churned them out before to put in place the people that actually represent us.
You always have a way of putting an explanation point on it. Thank you very much, Jessica. I really appreciate that. I want to go to Karen, because Karen, you're doing a special episode of Legal AF tonight with Ben Meidas and Michael Popak. I believe it airs. What time does it? Tell us about when it airs and what you guys are going to be talking about. It'll be on the Meidas Touch YouTube channel right here. So click subscribe while you're here and watch that episode. But tell us about that episode tonight, what you guys kind of talk about and break down on this special episode of Legal AF.
Yeah, so on Saturday nights, it's usually just Popak and Ben Meidas who do the Legal AF show, but I do the midweek with Popak on Wednesdays, but I join them tonight for a special episode just because this is such a momentous week that's just kind of unprecedented in our nation's history. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern, which is 3 hours from now on the Meidas Network. And we talk mostly about this issue and about this case, and we break down kind of what the issues are and the decision and what was new about it and kind of what this means for the future and what to look out for. We also talk about the kind of groundbreaking Second Amendment gun licensing case that also came down this week, Bruin. There's a church and state case we talked about, and we also recap the Jan 6 hearings. So it's just, the January 6th hearings, congressional hearings that are going on are kind of earth-shattering in and of themselves and could be their own special episode of Legal AF because they're so important and so much is coming out. And the fact that was just 25% of the show, because so many other really important issues had to be discussed from this week. So we all came together because it was such a special week that it kind of called for all hands on deck. So join us in 3 hours live. I think it's a show that is not like any other show we've had, and it's a really important one. And I hope everyone's also watching the Jan 6 hearings. You've been doing such a phenomenal job at hosting, Tony, and you've really done such a great job bringing people together and really helping lead everyone through these various hearings and what they mean and providing great commentary. So thank you for having me on that as well and having me on today. And it's just, I'm honored to be here with all of these wonderful women and with you. And thank you so much for having me. And I'm sorry about the dog and cat and other interruptions, but it's Saturday, we're home, and you just got to do what you got to do.
We're glad they joined in. So I know I caught you off guard, and I caught everyone off guard today because we tried to put this together so fast, but I felt that it was
good.
important to hear your voice. So everyone go watch Legal AF.
Can I just say, can I say one
go ahead.
thing really quick? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just think I think something Kimberly said is really important about how we don't know the reach of this decision. And I think that's the one thing, the sobering thing we all need to think about. When you think about the fact that so many women who experience infertility issues or fertility issues, they do things like, freeze their eggs or they freeze embryos. And sometimes they decide to use them and sometimes they don't. What do you do then? What are these embryos, right? And are these potential life, and what are the rights now, and how are these going to be legislated? I mean, it's just one example of about 100 that I think this is going to be winding its way through the courts. We have no idea the far reach of this terrible decision and what it's going to be and how it's going to impact just the things we've all learned to take for granted. So I just really wanted to punctuate that because the political, the things like I love what Lee was saying about have 27 justices and rotate them in and out and truly make justice blind. I actually think it's a brilliant idea. And there's so many great ideas that people are talking about from. I really do. I really love that idea. But again, it's partly because we don't know. This is going to have tentacles and reaches in ways that we just have no idea what this is going to impact. It's going to be things that we haven't even thought of yet, and
Right.
Especially if it's just going to be this particular court as it is. So it's very, very frightening.
Yes. Well, thank you, Karen, for joining us. And everyone go join Karen in 3 hours at 8 Eastern on the Meidas YouTube channel for Legal AF as her, Ben Meiselas, and Michael Popak break down some of these decisions from the Supreme Court, but this Dobbs decision in particular. Lee, I want to go to you as we kind of close out here. She kind of brought up your idea of the 27 justices, and I think that's just one brilliant idea. And I want to tell you, I've been getting messages here privately talking about the idea that you just had. So everyone's paying attention. So, but what do you make of some of these ramifications? Because even Dina at the beginning brought up a good one of men don't even understand how this is going to affect them and we don't fully know because we don't know what is going to be negated, how the state to state thing works. I mean, give us another really good idea. You floated this 27 justices. Give us another really good idea.
I know this is stuff I think about at home. I'm such a total nerd. Listen, I think the bottom line is we need to ask ourselves, what control does the government really have over us, right? Do we really believe that Mitch McConnell and Ron DeSantis and Matt Gaetz, or even the justices like Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett truly have the final say in what we can and cannot do with our own body, right? Do we believe that? Is that something that we believe? Because speaking to Jessica's point, ultimately it's about power. It's not about all these other things. It's about power. And I think that we have to think who has power over us, who is in charge of our bodies. Because people say, well, it's not really gone. Abortion isn't gone. It's just been kicked to the states, right? And I'm like, yes, but you can't change people's rights based on what state you're in, right? That's just not how it works. That was literally the argument for slavery. Just kick it back to the states. Let the states decide. But you can't have some states hold people in bondage and some states where people are free. It's not a state decision. Women either have rights to their own body or they don't. It's not up for debate. And quite frankly, we shouldn't even need a federal law that says we have a right to our own person because it should be a given. I've always said, to be quite honest, I am exhausted by the fact that women's bodily autonomy has always been connected to a court case, right? I find that exhausting that we were continually relitigating Roe v. Wade and the hypocrisy of the pro-life movement and the court cases and the opinions and the politicking around it. A woman's right to her own body should not be up for debate. But if we don't have it anymore, then we shouldn't just be trying to pass a law that sanctifies the right to abortion. We should be passing a law that sanctifies the right to bodily autonomy. Let's just step directly out of the baby murder camp, right? We can all agree that our bodies are our own, that you can't touch my body without my permission, right? That abusing or hurting someone else is illegal. We can't even take organs from a dead body, right? Unless they agreed to that before they died. Our bodies belong to us, and anything that suggests otherwise should be against the law. If I don't want to carry a baby to term, I shouldn't have to, because my womb belongs to me. No one can use it without my permission, not even a fetus, right? So if I want to remove a part of my body, if I want to have a nose job, if I want to have top surgery, if I want to have a hysterectomy, that should be my choice and my choice alone. If I am dying of a degenerative disease, I should be able to choose to end my life legally and on my own terms. That shouldn't be something I need permission for. We can't continue to pick and choose who gets full autonomy over their body and who does not. So we need to decide who makes these decisions. Is it the government? Is it the courts? Is it the church? I think it should be individual. In this case, we should reflect what we want to do with our own body. So if we go back to what Jessica was saying about power, when people say just vote, right? Yes, vote, but don't think of it as one vote. Think of it as gaining power, right? Expanding power, holding on to power. Because we need to get more pro-choice, pro-democracy people elected at every level of government. We need to defend our rights to our vote, to our voice, to our bodies in the months and the years ahead, because we don't have a choice now. There's no choice. We have to unseat these anti-choice legislators, and we have to flip the chambers, and we have to stop these totalitarian bans and whatever slippery slope we're on now that Clarence Thomas is talking about. We need to hold these Republican senators accountable for voting time and time again against our health and our safety and our democracy. And we need to do that at the state level, the local level, and the federal level, because we need enough senators who will vote to expand the courts, because this one is clearly bought and paid for, right? It is a corrupt political arm of one party and one fraction of a party that is seeking a different America than the vast amount of Americans want. Right? So we need to expand our power, hold on to our power. And we start that today, not in November, today, getting people registered to vote, firing people up, staying fired up. Yes, do these protests. Absolutely. But don't play into this ridiculous, what Ted Cruz is saying, that we're all going to be so violent and horrible. They were making hilarious jokes last night. They were like, someone kicked over a traffic cone and everyone was like, Antifa, we need to be really careful because they're looking for us to be violent so they can blame stuff on us. One on fire garbage can is just Fox News fodder. So we need to be smart about the way we're doing this. And we need to be smart about what we're doing leading up to November and then post-November, because we've got to keep that House, we've got to expand that Senate, and we have to get past that filibuster so we can actually get laws that reflect the people passed.
I think the calm is important that you're talking about in the streets. I mean, we need to peacefully protest as we see the pictures here of people protesting peacefully, and it's encouraging to see, right? But I think you're right when you talk about the ballot, because I think our vote is not just marking the ballot that you get. It's about engaging, whether it be whatever you're talented at. I know you're talented at putting these ideas and recording them and then cutting them into the great show, the award-winning show. I see your award behind you. I'm going to let you plug it here in just a second. But you do such a great job. Jessica does such a great job with commentary. I know Kimberly probably litigates the hell out of these things. And we all have to use our talents. We all have to use the things that we're good at. I mean, I yell and scream into the microphone every single day. But people out there listening, listen to what Lee is saying. It's not just about marking that ballot. It's about getting engaged. It's about walking in the streets if you can protest. It's about making phone calls for a candidate, rather a pro-democracy candidate, and doing the things that you need to do. I saw on social media, Ben Meidas and Jordy Meidas, the Meidas Touch, two of the Meidas Touch brothers, went down to Dallas. And they were writing note cards and they were knocking on doors. And all that matters. It really does matter. And that's engaging that vote, because again, it's not just about marking that ballot. It's about actually engaging in the voting process. And I think that's what you're saying there, Lee.
I am, but I want to speak to what Emma said, because it made me so sad, because Emma is far younger than I am. And she said, I feel powerless. And I want to tell her and every other young person, you are not powerless. That is how they want you to feel. And if our votes didn't count, if our power wasn't palpable, they wouldn't be trying to take them from us. They wouldn't be trying to take our power and our votes and suppress us so much. You're not powerless. They want you to feel that way. We can make a difference, but we have to do it in a short period of time, because if we give them much more power, it'll be impossible to roll back. So now is the time. And I want every young person to know that we are dependent on them understanding that we are fighting for their future just as much as we're fighting for our present.
Well, speaking of fighters and young people, Jessica knows something about fighting these wackaloons, as I call them sometimes. She fought the Trump campaign with the Trump NDA, and so give us, Jessica, give us your thoughts on fighting back and knowing that you have that power. And just what Lee said, if you didn't have it, they wouldn't be trying to take it.
There you go. That is the key, isn't it? They know what we have. So amen to Lee. I just echo everything she says. Yes, we have the power. We have simply to exercise it. And yes, such a short amount of time to do this. You know, this is kind of, we are viewing all of these things through a political lens or a legal lens. These are really just kind of universal issues. When we do not handle situations in our personal lives, they come back to us. And when they come back to us, they're usually more severe the next time. They're increasingly more severe until we handle them, until we put our foot down and say thus far and no farther. And I feel like this political situation that we're in is one of them. I mean, it was most certainly one of them for me personally when I first sued the Trump campaign. I had this situation that faced me, and it was like, Jessica, damn it, you need to put your foot down and handle this for once and for all. And I did. And as you know, some of the viewers watching right now have known, I was persistent. It was very hard, but I was victorious. So right now, we have let these Republicans, these extremists, these dark money forces go way too far for way too long. Let us say thus far and no farther in these next few months. It is feel like this is it. Let us just feel like this is the last chance we have. And we have to lay it all down, put all of our energy, write postcards, engage voters. I talk to people, everywhere. I talk to people at gas stations, at grocery stores. I am very outspoken in the public. Be safe, don't get yourself in trouble. But don't be afraid to just engage wherever you are. I do it all the time. And we can do this. We do have the power. We just have to be extremely serious about it, extremely focused, and use the next few months and not squander this opportunity, because it is in your hands and my hands to determine our future. So let's go.
Well, that's great, Kimberly. I'm going to give everyone a chance to do shameless plugs here, but tell us about your engagement here and what you think engagement sounds like to you, because I know Lee had a chance and Jessica. So what is engagement to you? What does it mean to you? And then give us your shameless plug. I'll go back to Jessica and then Lee for the plugs here.
Right. Well, when I was driving here today, thinking about what I was going to say on this podcast, I, like Emma, felt very helpless and powerless. And I was trying to think how I could, as an attorney, as a female, make the difference here and what I could do personally to take the next steps forward. It doesn't help to be just mad about this, to be in my bed, to be upset, to hate the Supreme Court right now and politicians and everybody. I always try to bring myself back to what my boss is. I work at Ben's firm, the Garagos firm, what Ben would say, what my boss Mark would say, and that's, as an attorney, we're here to be the voices for those people who can't speak. We're here to fight like hell in a courtroom for that ultimate purpose, that ultimate goal. And I'm very fortunate that that is my power and that's what I can do. And then I was trying to think what other people can do who aren't fortunate enough to have a stance and can make that position and to do those things. And as any person, I think this is the most sobering event to show what happens when we don't vote, when we're not informed. And in California, we just had our vote, and I think it was around 30%. I think it was less than that of people actually voted in our elections. And this is the biggest example of what happens when you don't use the power that you have. And this is what we have. So I think informed voting, and for young people in America, in California, everywhere, this is the biggest wake-up call that we need to be engaged. We need to go in and be informed, to gather knowledge, to gather neutral knowledge from both sides. It's shocking going on 2 separate news channels. I'll do this because I just want to see what's the political agenda of a certain event, and I'll see the drastic contrast between between Fox and CNN or MSNBC, and I try to find the underlying facts to give an informed decision for myself. And if I can talk to my friend who then talks to their friends or their family, and it just, the more you speak about it and base it on facts instead of that underlying, just like keep the passion that you have in how this makes you feel and the rage that you feel, but really gather the knowledge and the facts to give those, to make those decisions. And so we can get to the results we want. We can have the actual people in power who will do something for us. And I think that's where we need to go with that.
Well, I appreciate getting to the facts, because in this day of misinformation, it is tough to sift through them sometimes. Kimberly, thank you for joining us. Jessica, let's go to you. I know you give us your shameless plug, and then we'll go to Lee. I know she wants to brag about her award. I want to brag about her award. So yes, I want to brag about your award. This is great. You're award-winning podcaster. So I want to brag about that. Jessica, tell us what some final thoughts and any plug that you'd like to make, please.
All right, just picking up what Kimberly said about the false narratives, and Lee was talking about, protest, put yourself out there, but don't get violent. And I just want to clarify. I mean, I saw at least 2 things in the last 12 hours about not protesters being violent, but the counter protesters being violent against pro-choice. One of them was tear gas being shot out of the Capitol windows in Arizona at students. The other one, Popak just tweeted, I retweeted it, about I think Democrat candidate in Rhode Island being punched by a male police officer who was actually her political opponent. So let us make sure that we clear up this narrative. It is usually the vast majority of protesters on the pro-choice side are peaceful. It is the anti-choice forced birth movement that has been violent, that has literally killed, been after the lives of abortion workers, that has terrorized these people at their homes. All of a sudden we're all outraged about people at Supreme Court justices' homes. They actually had a ruling I wish we still had the lawyers here to cite the exact case, but they ruled that it was legal to protest outside of the homes of abortion workers. So if it's illegal to do that, what is the difference between being outside the home of a Supreme Court justice? And I'm not suggesting anything violent whatsoever, but let's be clear about the narrative here and who's violent and who's peaceful. My plug right now is that you can follow me on Twitter. I have a lot coming up. I don't have any specific things to give you right now, but just stay tuned. There's a lot in the works in my case. If you don't already know, I have a pending class action to invalidate every single NDA that was signed in 2016 by any Trump campaign staffer, employee, or independent contractor. There is a lot going on. I have a pending motion in DC Superior Court to hold Steve Bannon in contempt for not showing up for a subpoena in my original civil lawsuit. We're about to depose some other very high profile names. Lots going on and lots more to come. So stay tuned. I'm on Twitter at Jessica Denson07. And thank you to Tony. Thank you to the Meidas Media Network for the wonderful work you've done and including me in it.
Well, keep us up to date on Twitter about all your legal cases. Kicking ass and taking names over there. I definitely want to hear about that. That sounds interesting. Thank you, Jessica, for joining us. Lee, what's your final thoughts? And give us your plug, and please brag about that award behind you.
I'm not bragging about the award, Tony. That's not how it works. Here's the thing about awards that I think are good. If you get an award because people are listening, and all I'm doing out here is trying to be a messenger for how people are feeling in America and what the real pulse of the people is, because I think we're all kind of starving to be heard and to be seen. And I think that's what's happening with these protests. That's what's happening with people's rage around around these decisions, is that we need to be out there demanding to be protected, demanding to be heard, demanding to be seen, saying we won't go back. We're not going to go back. We won't go. And we also have to have in our heads that failure is not an option. We can't afford to lose. It's just, this is the way it is. And I don't think you should buy into these ideas that the Democrats are doomed because traditionally in a midterm election, there's nothing happening that's traditional here. There is nothing happening that is normal. And we have to see what's on the ballot. I mean, the end of democracy is on the ballot. A woman's right to her own body is on the ballot. If we're being quite honest with ourselves, gay rights are on the ballot. Trans rights are on the ballot. Social Security, quite frankly, is on the ballot. Medicare is on the ballot. And who makes decisions for us and who get protected is on the ballot. Jessica was just speaking about, the Supreme Court justices get protection and you can't be outside of their houses, but you can be outside of an abortion worker's house. This is not the same. We can't have laws apply to some of us and not to others. And we need to say in our voting and in our elections, we believe everyone deserves protection under the law. And if I was going to plug myself, I would say I am Politics Girl on Twitter. I am Breakfast Rant on TikTok and Insta, because those are the rants I do in my kitchen. And the podcast, the Politics Girl podcast, drops every Tuesday. And I'm really excited for this week's podcast because I interviewed and had a candid conversation with the president of Emily's List, LaFonza Butler, on the day this decision came down. And we just had this really passionate discussion that I am so excited to share with people on Tuesday. She's just an absolute powerhouse. And if you want somewhere to put your energy and money right now, Emily's List is a great place. The States Project is a great place because they're focusing on the states and how we can help at that level. And as always, I'm Politics Girl on YouTube. So if you want to watch the podcast visually, you can watch it on YouTube. And if you want to listen, you can listen anywhere you get your pods.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I appreciate your voices in this fight because I think it's important that the people hear from we have so many men sitting around trying to decide what women are going to do and what they're not going to do with their bodies. I think George Carlin said it best once. Once they're willing to implant one of those embryos into their own bodies, maybe then they can start making decisions for women. But until then, maybe they shouldn't be focused on women's bodies. Maybe they should be focused on their own. So I appreciate all of you intelligent women joining us today for all your commentary. As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. And come back. We'll be with the January 6 hearings as they return in July. So thank you very much. Thank you. Go listen to Politics Girl. Go follow Jessica and be watching Kimberly. I know she's going to be litigating these things in the court. She's kicking ass and taking names. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
So there you have it. We have the coverage of the Roe v. Wade protest here in front of the Supreme Court. We'll bring it up one more time. You see the live coverage here. I want to say one thing before we go, because several of the great commentators today touched on the peaceful protest, but they also talked about staying calm. And you have to have strategic outrage. That is super, super important here with your outrage, and to be strategic as you think about the ways that you're going to engage, because you do have the choice. Regardless if it seems that you don't, you do have the choice. These people right here, as you see standing protesting in front of the Supreme Court of the United States, had the choice to go there today, and stand there with those signs and to protest. And you have the choice to engage. You have the choice to have a conversation. You have the choice to engage in your election and your government. It is a choice that you can make. So realize, even though they're trying to take away our rights, and that is why you must make the choice to be engaged, you still do have the choice to be pro-democracy. Thanks for joining us here on the Meidas Media Network. Again, at 8 Eastern, you will see a special episode of Legal AF at the regular time, having Ben Meiselas, Michael Popak, and Karen Agnipolo, who joined us today. Thank you for joining us, and please subscribe to the Meidas Touch YouTube channel for any more special broadcasts. And coming up in July, the special coverage of the January 6th select hearings. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thank you for joining us today.